Hi guys, my name is Victoria and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in the month of October. I read a pretty decent amount. I got through 5 books, well 4 books and 1 manga, and it was a mixed bag. I started the month pretty strong and then it kind of went downhill just a little bit, but let's go ahead and jump right in. So the month of October was really a month of me reading through series. All of the books I'm going to talk about today are part of a series, either the end of one or the middle of one. And so let's talk about the series that I finished first, and that would be the Earthsea series. And so I read book 5, Tales from Earthsea by Ursula Le Guin, and then book 6, The Other Wind. So here's what happened with this series for me. I started out the series just loving it, and then books 3 and 4 really took a nosedive for me. Book 4, I think I rated 2 stars. I didn't really understand what Ursula Le Guin was trying to do with book 4, and I think I understand a little bit better now, but books 5 and 6 really saved the series for me. I rated both of these books 5 stars. So just to give you kind of a summary of the Earthsea series, Earthsea is a fantastical world. This started out as a young adult series, and then it sort of morphed into an adult series as Ursula Le Guin revisited it in her later life. There was like a 20-year gap between the 3rd book and the 4th book in the series, and so you can really feel a different tone as the later books continue. I really liked this book 5. This is more of an expansion of the universe of Earthsea, which I think was really necessary to the series. That was one of my biggest complaints reading through the series, was that the world wasn't expanded enough. It wasn't large enough, or it felt really large, but we didn't know a lot about it. The Earthsea books are really short, and I just felt like there was so much more to explore. And in book 5, we actually do get to explore a lot more corners of the universe, which I really appreciated and really needed to root for this series again. But this is actually a short story collection, but mind you, it is totally a necessary short story collection to read in the series, and you absolutely must read it before the last volume. It's not one of those things where there's just a short story collection thrown in there. It does absolutely tie into the next book. So loved the short story collection. The last book I thought was not as strong, but I thought it was really strong. I also just ended up giving this 5 stars because I thought it was a really great and fun wrap up to the series. The Other Wind surprised me. It had some more comedic moments and comedic characters, which I enjoyed. One princess in particular. We also introduced a new character in this last book who I thought was pretty strong. I thought his story was strong and his struggle was strong. We finished the series with meeting Alder, and Alder is plagued with these dreams of the dead kind of trying to reach through and break through into the land of the living. And there's just something wrong with his dreams, and he knows that there's more to it than just dreams. He thinks maybe it's real. And so our main character, Ged, kind of helps Alder, and then we have other characters that we know throughout the series. Tenar is back in this one. Tahanu is back in this one. And we finally kind of understand what the story has been leading up to. This book makes Tahanu, the 4th book, make a lot more sense. That was one of the things about the 4th book that I did not like, was I felt like I didn't really understand what she was doing with the world, but this really kind of tied it all together, and now I understand. And it was just a really solid conclusion. So really enjoyed finishing this series, really enjoyed the last books. I actually have a video where I talk more in depth about the entire Earthsea series. I'll link that in the cards if you're interested. But yeah, I'm so glad that I got to these books this year. These are great. Next up, I continued through my journey through a Fruits Basket. Honestly, I'm not sure I'm gonna continue at this point. I read volume 7, and oh, by the way, this is by Natsuki Takaya. It is a manga. And it's a really well-loved manga. I'm just to the point where I forget about the characters and who they are, and it pretty much goes, the story just goes in one ear and out the other, and it's just not sticking with me. So I don't know. I have like 4 more volumes, maybe 5 more volumes to go before I finish the series. So part of me is like, just keep going, just push through. But the other part of me just didn't enjoy this one very much. I just gave it 3 stars. I just thought it was okay. I'm a little tired of just having so many characters that I can't remember who they are and I can't keep track of them. This is probably more a problem with me and my faulty brain, where I just can't retain this story for some reason. I did enjoy learning this character's backstory. I think is her name Rin? See, I already forgot. I already forgot the characters' names, even the ones I like. I just can't. I can't keep track. I can't keep up. But I did really like her backstory and found her really interesting, and it was good to get to know her better, because we just find her to be kind of a jerk until you kind of learn why she acts the way she does. And I don't know. It's just the series gets all jumbled in my mind. And I think it's a personal problem, to be honest. But I'm on the fence of whether or not I'm going to continue. I probably won't pick it up anytime super soon, but we'll see. If you enjoy the series and if you have love for it, let me know, because you might need to talk me into continuing. Or let me know if maybe it's not worth my time. I'm going to put that down for now. And then the next 2 books I read were also part of the same series. I continued on with my Wrinkle in Time series, or that's not what it's called. It's called the Time Quintet. And so I'm on book 2 and book 3. I just finished these, and I have really mixed feelings about the series so far. I have a lot of nostalgia wrapped up with these books. When I was a kid, I was really enthralled by these stories. I thought they were fascinating, and I think they made me feel really smart when I was reading them, because they're very complicated stories, I think, for kids. And I appreciate that about Madeleine L'Engle, that she doesn't like dumb down anything in her kids' stories. These are definitely more adult as they continue, or maybe more young adult. There's a lot more complexity, especially in book 3, than there was in book 1, A Wrinkle in Time. Let's talk about book 2 first. Getting ahead of myself. A Wind in the Door. Okay, so this book, I would say I enjoyed more than book 3. I thought it was very enjoyable. The story and the characters are a little more, I'm not going to say straightforward, because I still think it's a really bizarre story, and I think not everybody will enjoy that aspect. You have to really just kind of go with things. And there's a lot of just abstract things that happen. We spend a lot of time in characters' heads, and they are basically communicating with each other through telepathy for a lot of this book. And so we spend a lot of time just in the darkness with their thoughts. And we have to kind of imagine the things that are happening. So in that way, I think it really stretches the imagination, and it makes kids really stretch their imagination and use their imagination. In this book, we have Meg and Charles Wallace as really the center of the story. And Charles Wallace is falling deathly ill, and no one can figure out why, until a cherubim shows up in their like backwoods forest of their home. And the cherubim I just found really a creative character. I thought he had a really funny personality, and he was really an entertaining character, a very lovable character. And I found him just really fascinating. I thought he was a well-written character who kind of helps Meg and Charles Wallace figure out what's going on. Why is Charles Wallace getting so sick? And there's a lot of microbiology, and we talk a lot about like bacteria, so mitochondria, and something else that's called, what is it? Farandole, that's what it is. And in this book, we are also introduced to sort of the demons of the world, who are called ecthroi, and they very much function like demons or evil spirits. And so the ecthroi are what's really attacking Charles Wallace, and they just want chaos. They want evil for the world, and they have really gotten to Charles Wallace, and so we have to figure out how to defeat the Ecthroi. So if this all sounds really bizarre to you, it's because it is. But I did really like this volume. I think the really abstractness kind of got to me, and I was kind of not interested in like the middle of the book. But I would say after reading book 3, I might actually rate this more like 3.5 stars instead of 3 stars, because I think that book 3 really takes a nosedive a little bit. I rated it 3 stars, but I think that's being generous. I'm really thinking more like 2.5 maybe. Okay. Book 3. This is just a mess of a book, in my opinion. I think it's messy. I think it's not constructed well. I think it's confusing. The ending felt really flat and just wrapped up really quickly. It's like this book just stopped. We were just going along and suddenly it just stops. And it didn't really make sense the way it ended. And I thought the plot in general just wasn't very strong. So in this book, we actually are many years into the future. We have a 15-year-old Charles Wallace. We have a grown, married, and pregnant Meg. And I've read a lot of reviews about this book, and a lot of people being kind of upset about Meg just kind of being pregnant, and that's like her whole role in this book. Most of the time when we see Meg, she's just laying on a bed with her dog, and she is communicating with Charles Wallace through her telepathy because she's pregnant and she can't go on any adventures herself. So a lot of people have a really big issue with that part of the book. I actually didn't really notice that. I didn't really think about it until I read some of those reviews that pointed it out. And yeah, that does now strike me a little weird, but it wasn't like the reason why I didn't love this book. We spent a lot of time with Charles Wallace. Charles Wallace is really our protagonist in this book. So I just felt like Meg was pregnant and at home because Madeleine L'Engle just wanted Charles Wallace to have his own adventure instead of Charles Wallace just being sick and other people trying to save him, which is what happened in book 2. Now Charles Wallace got to go on adventures. So that's how I read it, but I'd be curious to hear other people's thoughts. We have a unicorn in this book named Gaudior, and Charles Wallace and Gaudior are going on this adventure. We start our adventure with a phone call that Mr. Murray gets because their parents are scientists and they are often consulted by the President of the United States because they're that important of scientists. And so he gets a call from the President saying that there's this mad dictator who is going to basically nuke everyone and blow up the world and America, and there's nothing they can do about it unless the Murrays can figure out a way to stop it. And the parents are kind of like, we don't know. So Meg's mother-in-law introduces them to this rune, and when they chant this rune, magical things happen. So they end up chanting this rune, and then the unicorn appears, and then it kind of explains what needs to happen to Charles Wallace. And basically they have to go back in time and figure out a way to change this mad dictator's lineage so that he becomes good, not evil. And so this is all a time traveling book, and they go back in time to like Salem witch trials, they go to colonial times, they go back to like 70s, 80s era, and they follow this man's lineage and they try to basically alter the family line. There are a lot of really confusing names in here that are very similar. There are like 4 generations of people that we have to follow, and it gets really confusing, I thought, and it gets really convoluted, and it's all about the family tree. From what I know about Madeleine L'Engle's later books, she is really fascinated with lineage and family trees, and so that's really at the center of this book. Unfortunately, I just didn't think it was done very well. I thought we were really just all over the place. It was confusing, and the ending just was really disappointing. So I can't recommend this book very highly in the series. I was not really a fan of this one, which was surprising because I really did like the unicorn. Who doesn't like an adventure on the back of a unicorn? But unfortunately, it wasn't enough to save this book in my eyes. So 2-ish stars, 2.5, rounded up to 3. I'm being generous. In my wrap-ups, I also usually talk about things that I watched or listened to. And I don't think I watched a single movie, but I watched a little bit of TV. But I would like to really highly recommend to you the Netflix documentary Undocumented. Man, this was a heartbreaking watch, and you really come away from it, unfortunately, feeling a little bit hopeless. But I think it's important that we know what's happening in our country and the way that our country is treating illegal immigrants and people who have lived here for their whole lives. And it's heartbreaking. This, I think I cried like every episode at least once. Yeah, you should watch this. If you have any heart for illegal immigrants and what's happening in America right now, you need to watch this. If you don't have a heart for them, you need to watch this. It will give you a heart for them. Man, this is worth watching. It's very well done documentary too. Very high quality, and I was honestly really shocked at some of the things that I learned. Another show that I've been enjoying on Netflix is another documentary. Apparently that's been my thing this month, but Explained on Netflix is really interesting and informative. If you haven't checked it out, they're really short little vignettes about different topics. So like they have one on how music works. They have one on cults and how people get sucked into cults. They have one on, they have one on so many different things. They have one on billionaires and the 1%. And so I really just enjoy this. It's really easy to watch, like if you just need something really quick or you don't have much time to watch something. One of these is a great way to go. I listened to a lot of music this month, which is maybe why I didn't watch as many things, because I was really just listening a lot. Some of the music that I've really enjoyed this month, I discovered that I really enjoy Hozier. I only really knew his like main Take Me to Church song that everybody likes and listens to on the radio, but I explored some of his other stuff, and he is really talented, and he has a lot of really good stuff and a lot of really good songs. Sorry, I'm petting my cat. I keep like bending down. It's because my cat is right here. But I discovered that I really like Hozier. I don't know how you say his name, but I like him. I also listened to Cosmos Sheldrake, who a friend introduced me to, and I am fascinated by his textures, and he uses a lot of like woodwindy sounds and brass sounds. I think I read that I think he actually plays a lot of different instruments. He's like a multi-instrumentalist. So really enjoyed his writing. A lot of just really interesting compositions. I also, as a flutist, I really follow Emmanuel Pahoud, who is a flute player, a really famous and wonderful flute player. He released a new album this month, and it's fantastic, of course. So I was listening to that in more the classical genre. And then I also went to a Dream Theater concert this month, so I listened a lot to one of the albums that Dream Theater was performing on their tour. They came really close to where I live, and so I had to go. I actually went on another of the same tour concerts. I went when they were in LA, and then they came back to a city even closer to me in Riverside, and so I went to both on the same tour. I think they're only on tour for maybe a little bit longer, I'm not sure, but they performed the entire Scenes from a Memory, which is a legendary album by them, and I've been following this band for years, and my husband and I, it was actually our first date, was going to a Dream Theater concert, so this band is just really special to me. It's been really fun to revisit Scenes from a Memory and get to know that album better, and then to hear it live was just like a whole other ball game. So that was really fun. I had a lot of fun with music this month, just a lot of really good stuff. Let me know what you read in the month of October. I'd love to know, or if you've read any of the books that I talked about, or if you're a fan of any of the music or the TV that I watched. I didn't watch a lot of TV, but a little bit. let me know. I would love to chat about these things with you in the comments down below. I hope you're having a great day and keep reading great books, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.